Hello everyone, my name is Daskro, and this is my submission to the Battlefield 3 Premium Map Contest. And my submission is called Redefine the Urban Syntax because that is what I am trying to accomplish in this concept. So let's go right into this. First, I want to talk to you about the city of Nablus. The city of Nablus is a city of old. It's in the heart of the beginnings of civilization in the Middle East, and it's characterized best by describing it as a dense urban landscape. It doesn't have any uniform grids or blocks or squares like we see in modern cities, but instead it's much more organic. It's an amalgamation of shops and houses and 2- and 3-story buildings all nestled together with veiny alleys and roads that just sort of twist and turn through the city center. It's very organic and narrow in that respect. It's not a city for modern transportation. It's a city for walking. Why do I bring this up? I bring it up because I want to ask you a question about the Battle of Nablus. See, Nablus was, in fact, the location of a recent battle. And before I go into the details of what happened in this battle, I want to posit a question to you. Look at this picture over here. How do you interpret that picture? How do you interpret the picture of this alley? Do you picture it as a route of passage, or do you picture it instead as a forbidden place? Well, this very question was what a general on the Israeli Defense Forces had questioned himself when he engaged in the Battle of Nablus during the Second Intifada in 2004 outside of Jerusalem. In this case, he said this: how do you interpret the alley? Do you interpret the alley as a place, like every architect and every town planner does, to walk through, or do you interpret the alley as a forbidden place? This depends only on interpretation. We interpreted the alley as a forbidden place to walk through because a weapon awaits us in that alley. This is because the enemy interprets the space in a classical, traditional manner. And not only do we not want to fall for his traps, we want to surprise him. This is the essence of war, and this is what we tried to do. Brigadier General Aviv Kakavi. See, Aviv knew that if he tried to go through the alleys, if he tried to go through the roads, and if he tried to go through the doorways and windows, he would be approached by landmines, by machine gun fire, by booby traps, and he did not want to suffer those casualties. And so, he did something completely unorthodox, completely untraditional. Controversial, no doubt. Instead, he said, we are going to avoid these traditional passageways and instead create our own. He did just that. He started blowing down walls. He started blowing down walls of bedrooms, of kitchens, of the very living spaces of the inhabitants of the city of Nablus. He created his over-the-ground tunnels to go to the city center. This is a picture of Nablus, and he had several platoons scattered around the outskirts of the city as he tried to go inward. He did not take the roads, but instead he created his own. He didn't view Nablus as simply a venue in which the battle was to be fought. He viewed Nablus as a medium in which he could change the urban syntax to meet his objectives. And this is the heart of the map concept that I would like to see in future Battlefield games. This idea that individuals that are playing the game can redefine the very environment that they are playing in to meet their objectives. So let's go back into this a bit more. Destruction as redefining the landscape. No more should we be constrained by the pre-created alleys and streets and passageways that the map designers create, but instead allow our minds to be free of this limited interpretation and allow only our innovation, only our ingenuity to create these roads on our own, creating a unique experience that is different from game to game. It empowers the players to choose their routes, to choose whether they want to go directly for a given objective or if they want to snake around. It also sort of creates this paradox in terms of the traditional spaces we talk about. This idea that we have open spaces, roads and alleys and different avenues which we would traditionally take. They're alluring. They seem to be the easiest route to where we are trying to go, but they are fraught with danger. In the roads, we have obstacles and landmines and other things of that nature. In alleys, we may have second or third story windows where a sniper or a support guy is there and he is able to suppress the enemy from taking that route. It creates this sort of odd balance between the traditional model of what we see in Battlefield games versus this new concept, where players can truly be more empowered in redefining the environment in which they play in. So my question to you is, which path is better here? Is it this roadway to the right, or is it creating your own on the left? I don't want to be limited by the former. I want to be released from the confines of the former with the latter. So with that being said, let's go into my map concept in a bit more detail. First off, I want this dense urban landscape like I described, but I still want to have the semblances of the traditional routes and thoroughfares that we would see. Roads and alleys that go throughout this urban structure. But I also would like to see perhaps a secondary route. In this case, a rail line that borders a steep cliff or mountain. I want these traditional passageways to be alluring, to be places in which you can go. However, they have the potential of risk because they will be open and exposed, and there'll be plenty of places for people to hide, utilizing this constantly changing urban syntax that they can use to their advantage. But this is just a part of it. As you can see, I have A and B points listed here. If we go down, we add to this. I want to continue to see the dense urban structures go throughout this map. However, I want to have a number of these main arteries, these main roads, all move into a central location, a roundabout, if you will, perhaps with a fountain, as we saw in Strike Karkin, or maybe an architectural structure of some sort like we see in Tehran Highway. I want this to be sort of a focal point, an open space where a capture point or even an MCOM may be, where it is incredibly exposed and requires teamwork in using smoke and in destroying surrounding buildings so the team can push on up and grab that objective and accomplish what they're trying to gain. Around this, though, I want to add a bit of different types of close quarters urban fighting beyond this house-to-house fighting like we would see in the previous aspects of this map. I also would like to see sort of the kind of factory we see in the map scrap metal. This idea that it's a factory with a bunch of lathes and mills, and I want a cap point to be in that. And I want it to be sort of apart from the rest of the map, where the kind of loadouts and the kind of gameplay needed to capture this point, or to arm a MCOM in this area, will require a different setup, require you to play differently and think differently. While alluring to go into this and fight this open area, like we see in the map scrap metal, it is very, very dangerous, and one cannot simply hide that easily because there's routes that the enemies can take left and right. Behind it, some warehouses, and perhaps to the west, we see some fuel tanks to put fuel into the gas station that we saw in the previous section. And in this, the images I show here are simply representative. I want the players to not just take the traditional roadways and alleys that I have highlighted here in white and gray. I want them to create their own alleys. I want them to dig tunnels through the walls and through the ceilings and through the floors of the very buildings that there are. This is not going to be Grand Bazaar where it's just one alley and a bunch of concrete structures that you can't access. Instead, I want players to be able to create their own routes to try to deceive the enemy. I want an experience where two teams may both be digging to one location, perhaps D point in this map or A or B point, and there may only be one or two buildings apart from the two teams as they dig past one another. And what more intense than digging through these houses and listening and hearing enemies just on the other side of that wall, and then asking the question of, do I destroy this wall and engage them? Do I go up to a second or third story? Almost like what we see in the map Strike at Karkin during the first level, where we see 3 or 4 buildings all nestled together. In those buildings, you can hear the enemy under buildings, and do you simply go downstairs and go through the alley and try to engage them, or do you create a hole? Do you utilize your imagination in being innovative and creating new passageways for you to go to? Jumping from roof to roof, for instance, or simply destroying the roof outright. In this map, though, I do want to still have some traditional aspects of Battlefield. I still want to see things like LAVs and BMP-2s. I want to see light helicopters. I want to see one side having the ability to traverse in the air with these light helicopters, but with the full realization that every house that they pass isn't simply for aesthetics. Every house is a potential place for the enemy to pop out with machine gun fire or a man-pad of some sort, like an Igla or a Stinger. I want that fear of using those assets in place so one could use a light helicopter and traverse to a point that's deep in this urban structure. But they have to be careful, because if they're not, they could easily be shot out or destroyed. Likewise, with the APCs or IFVs, I want them to try to navigate from one point to the next. However, these roads are littered with barricades and cars and other debris of that nature. While alluring to use, it will be difficult to traverse from one point to the next. Same thing goes with light vehicles such as Vodniks or Humvees. I want them to be tempting, but fraught with danger. This is the concept that I would like to see, and I by no means am trying to advocate that it should be set in the city of Nablus. It could be set in Rome. It could be set in Rio de Janeiro. It could be set in any place where we see an old city with dense urban architecture, nestled together and expanded over time in a much more organic fashion than what we see in traditional cities. This is what I'd like to see for my map submission. Redefine the urban syntax. That is what I am trying to accomplish. So thank you, DICE, for continuing to make Battlefield, and hopefully we can see this kind of map in the future. Thanks.